So let's start by you telling me a bit about this book.
For Fox's Sake is an educational book that's been written for young teenage girls. It covers off love, sex and relationships, and it's quite different to a typical sex education textbook. It's got a lot of real life stories and real life advice that makes it really relevant in today's digital age.
So is Fox's Sake an educational book?
Yeah, For Fox's Sake is an educational book that's been written for young teenage women. It draws on a number of different facts and data and studies, but it also takes a slightly different twist. It takes approach of having a sex fairy godmother, someone that you trust, that you can go to for advice. You can ask the slightly squicky questions that you wouldn't necessarily ask a teacher or a parent, and spins it all into one safe place for young girls to get information about sex and love and relationships.
So how does this differ from other sex ed resources?
For Fox's Sake is different from other sex ed books. While it does use research and data, it's less about this bit goes here and this happens to this is what your life experience is going to be like, this is what your first relationship is going to be like, this is what your first sexual relationship or sexual experience is likely to be like. So it really brings those, pieces of data and those different biological factors into real life so that they can, so young teenage girls can really resonate with it, understand it in a really practical way, and hopefully use it to make smart decisions for themselves when the time comes.
A common said thing is that there's the over-sexualisation of teenagers. Is this providing them with too much information?
It's definitely not providing them with too much information. What it's providing them with is factual, correct information that's the flip side of the coin to what they're seeing out there in the mass media and video clips, in pornography. So For Fox's Sake is actually the better thing to be giving them. It's not giving them more information, it's just evening things out and balancing the ledger so that they're dealing in fact rather than fantasy.
Is this going to encourage them to go out and be more sexually promiscuous?
Reading For Fox's Sake is definitely not going to encourage young people to go out and be more sexually promiscuous. If anything, it's going to do the opposite. Time and time again, research has shown that the better sexual education that teenagers have at the right time in their lives, they have fewer STIs, they definitely have far fewer unplanned pregnancies, and they will often wait to start sexual relationships later in life. So they're making smarter decisions with the more information that they have. And I know that can be challenging for certain educators and parents to wrap their heads around. It's always really challenging to see, your child or your teenager move into another realm of their life. But the reality is the more information they have, the smarter they actually get. I think we also need to give our teenagers credit that they are smart people, they are intelligent, and they're very capable of making their own decisions from a quite early age. So we should give them credit and give them the right information, in a safe environment that has been fact-checked so that they can go off and make these decisions and live their lives.
For the critics out there that say that you don't come from a medical background or a sort of psychological background, what is your training and where does the basis of this book come from?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from my personal background, I'm a university graduate with 20 years of working experience and life experience, but effectively what I am is a professional writer and a researcher. So I've resourced over 70 different studies. I have interviewed subject matter experts like GPs, psychologists and pharmacists, as well as leveraged research from the federal and state government and other peak bodies. So we know that all of this information is really carefully vetted, and we've spoken to the right people to put the right information in For Fox's Sake. That's a process that I've been very protective of, and I've been very careful to make sure that it's absolutely spot on. The flip side of that is that I got the idea for writing For Fox's Sake when I was speaking to women through the course of my professional life. I was speaking to them absolutely every day about sex, their sexuality, and often sexual dysfunction, and it really showed to me that there was a huge gap that was still lingering. If they weren't getting good sex education in their teenage years, it was going throughout their 20s, 30s, 40s, and now into their 50s and 60s, and they've never been able to really successfully close that gap. A lot of the reasons for that is a lack lack of confidence, has been a lifelong of hearing slut shaming going on, a lifelong of not hearing sex positive messages. So you can see that it has a really big impact that can linger for a lifetime, poor sex education from the outset. So I made the decision to write for Fox's sake for young people today in this really dynamic digital environment that we're all living in hopes of closing that education gap.
Parents would think that maybe having been a teenager themselves, they may have the tools and the ability to be able to talk to kids based on their own experience. Has the landscape changed? Do they need a tool like this?
Yeah, I think you can never underestimate the power of that parent-child relationship and their ability to speak openly and honestly. What is completely different is that the digital world has taken off in such a different direction to where it was when parents of teenagers were teenagers themselves, and that's nobody's fault. It has just changed so rapidly. Snapchat didn't even exist 5 years ago. Texting didn't exist 15 years ago, and certainly when these parents were teenagers, internet porn was most definitely not what it is today. So it simply has changed, and there's a lot of stress and pressure put on young people. So this tool is just one more thing that will help hopefully enhance that parent-child relationship and keep that dialogue going rather than be a replacement for it.